So, I thought on this occasion I would ask Steve and Alan some questions, and then we'll have a bit of a chat. And if you want to ask us anything about the film, anything at all, then feel free to do that. And when we've run out of that, fed up of doing that, then you can all go home really. Until that time, you've got to stay here. So, Steve, I'll just ask you a question. So, why did you take on the role?
Well, I've known you for many years, as you know.
Yeah, that's true.
Funnily enough.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's why.
Oh, okay, right, okay.
That's it. Well, it counts towards my community service.
Basically, you know me for a long time. There's a good chance of being in a film. Okay, that's the thing.
Well,
sorry, yeah.
You always said that you would write something, and that you would write something for me, and you know, I never expected you to. So it was, you know, I was touched that you asked me, and I was rather impressed that you decided to do a feature film. When you said you wanted to do a film, I said, well, it'll just be a short then, won't it? It'll be a 10-minute job and that'll be what. I said, no, I want to do a feature film. So, in a way, it was churlish to turn it down. And the part's very good, was very good. But I was really impressed by your chutzpah in having a decision that whatever happened, you'd make a feature. You know, you weren't going to be blown off course from that. And, it took you a while to do it, but you did it in your own way. So I was impressed by that to begin with, and I'm still impressed and was increasingly impressed that, as I say, you did it without any compromise. You did it your own way.
The other thing was, I know Steve as a real person, Stephen Swift, as opposed to the character, and you're nothing like the character. So how did you go about being that person? Because that guy's a pretty kind of, he's a bit different to you, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a choral figure though, isn't he? He's a choral figure. He's essential because he comments on the action by not saying anything. He comments on the action. He's a really important figure. So it's just important to let everybody else have their say, and to give him some kind of internal life, so that so he's not just a blank canvas. You know, he comes with a backstory, of course, and he's got a big backstory. But apart from the fact that he feels he shouldn't be there, but he has no other choice. He feels he has no other choice. He comments on the action constantly. He's part of the mood music of every scene, and his silence speaks volumes. So it was about having a kind of knowing where the character is, knowing what he feels, and knowing his anger and the fact that he feels that life's done this to him, put him in this situation. And his cynicism, but part of the trick is not making that the whole of the character, so that there's plenty of room for other people to imprint their personality on him.
And Alan, your character is quite a different character, because often we don't actually hear what he's saying. You know, we don't hear what he's hearing or what's going on. So. How did you go around that one? Because there are, I know that you're someone who, you're not that character. You're not that character, but you are in possession of a mobile phone, let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I use it quite a lot. I think just to go back to the point that was made there a minute ago as well, it's quite strange when you're involved in sort of that type of project, because it's a bit like a football analogy, or being the manager of Man United or something. We all think we can do that job better than that person, and we're always questioning, like, particularly say Fergie, why are you doing that, or why have you made that decision? And I think when you look at a feature like that, it's a tremendous achievement for you, Bill, because not only have you written it, but you've actually directed it, produced it, you've made it, and there's not many people who can actually say that. Now, there's a number of things with the film that work very well, and I think that you and us, because we're involved with it, should be very proud of that. But I think with regards to my own particular involvement, it's a bit like Steve said. You came up with this particular idea that you were going to write a film that was based around a car park, and there's sort of plots and subplots and everything happening with it, and I think. To be involved at the beginning was fantastic, and I don't think any of us thought it was going to take as long as it did, and it's quite surreal, to sit here, 8 years later, and you look back and you think, wow, we were part of that project then and then, and here we are now. But you know, for my part, and as regards my involvement with it, it was just, I've said this all along when we've spoken about this particular project, that because of you and the person you are, it was great to be involved, because you know, we all did it because we wanted to. We all did it because we wanted to be involved in it. So it wasn't a case of we were doing it for the money, or we were doing it because we were on an ego trip. We were doing it, you know, I think this is out of respect to you. We did it first and foremost because you asked us, and I think we all did our best with it, you know, and I'm sure, you know, no one's trying to say that the acting is absolutely perfect or brilliant in the film, but what it is, it's committed and it's heartfelt, you know, and I think that's the strength of it, you know, whether or not you like the storyline, or for that matter whether you understand it, it's a separate issue, and we could have a discussion about that. But I think from my point of view, for you, what I enjoy about it is that, you know, I know probably 99% I'll never be in a feature film. I'll never be in a film that's been written and produced by someone who I know. And like Steve, you know, yeah, we've all done short films, we've all been involved in them, whether we do the acting side or the voiceovers, but it was an exciting challenge. It's quite a long-winded answer, that, wasn't it?
I'm quite happy with that answer, actually. It's a good one.
No, it was great. Bill, listen, you gave a lot of people the opportunity to be in something that they'll never ever experience again, and I think that's what we've always got to look at, you know. Again, I go back to the football analogy of, you know, questioning Fergie or whoever it might be, why they're doing this, why they're doing that. But I think when you turn it around and you look at that project, you know, you worked very hard on it. There was a lot of time, a lot of energy, your money, your commitment. You know, we had the easy bit, we just turned up and you sort of gave us the script beforehand to look at it and see what we could do with it, but you directed it and produced it, and you know, the credit goes down to you. And we just did our best for you. You know, that people will look at different performances in there and say, well, perhaps that could have been better, but they say that about, you know, Tom Cruise or whoever it might be in the latest blockbusters, you
That's
know.
true.
So, you know, we're all open to that and critical of you.
Yeah.
Anyhow, shut up now.
No, it's okay. Steve, again, I mean, just for some of you who don't know, Steve's been in a lot of programmes that you will have heard of. He's been in Coronation Street, he's been in Cold Feet, he's also spearheaded a lot of commercials. And how I knew Steve was he'd run his own theatre company, and I'd seen him in a lot of theatre in Manchester in the 90s. So like Alan, I knew him, but I knew him as a performer, because Alan also has been in Coronation Street. That is not, it's not something we mention, and been in movies and things. But that was the first time. I know you'd carried a lot of stage productions. You know, you starred in a lot of stage productions, but you'd never starred, as it were, because I think you are the lead character without doubt for me. So, what challenges did that give you? Because you were carrying the film. Because if you don't deliver the film, you know, which you did, the film doesn't happen. So, how was that different for you to actually star in a film?
It's a sustainability. That's the thing. It's doing it day after day. It's not. It's a. I suppose it's a terrible analogy, but it's a marathon, not a sprint situation. You know, because I've done programs before where I've had a few days on there, but this was about a couple of weeks, wasn't it, or so? In principle. Yeah, a couple of weeks is even more, maybe, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think actually this is the same thing, because people say it took a long time, but the main shoot, we did like 6 or 7 days, and then we left it for 6 months, then we did about another 5 days, and then we did other pieces at other times for a weekend or a day. So it didn't take that long to do. What took a long time was the editing. That's what it took a long time. If we had had the money to edit it, it would have been made a long time earlier.
But for me personally, for my character personally, in a way it's about sustaining that, but it's easier for me because of the kind of character you wrote. So, you know, he doesn't sustain an energy in that way, because he, as I said before, he's a choral figure, and because he comments on the action. That didn't give me a huge issue, but it's difficult to keep that focus for that long, particularly filming in the way we did, where we didn't have, where, you know, there's no luxury involved here. There's not we didn't have any trailers. There's no Winnebagos involved. So, you know, it is difficult. They're long days, and you know, we all understood that before we signed up for this. So that's difficult to keep the focus and to sustain it over all those days.
Can I add a point there as well?
Sure.
As well, I think not particularly Steve and I, but sort of the mainstream actors, the three main actors, if you like. We didn't really know each other as such, did we? You know, and that was an interesting sort of challenge, because you know, it's like any job that you go to. You know, if you go into a new place of work or an environment, you know, you're trying to find out who your colleagues are. You're trying to find out the geography of where you're at. And as Steve says, you know, it wasn't any. It was literally in a car park. There was an old disused hut, as you saw in the film, and you know, there was lots of challenges above and beyond the actual delivery of the project, you know, because that's what made it exciting, and I think that all adds to it as well, because one of the things I've said to the students when we've been speaking here about your film is that you can learn so much from it, you know, and right across the board, from the very nitty-gritty of recruiting your actors to getting the labour force, if you like, from the cameras, getting people to supply you with the tracks. Everything has to be organised, and it was a massive learning process for a lot of people involved in it.
But as far as performing goes, you know, and you're right that we didn't know each other, and that's usually, you know, that's often what happens. But we were given the opportunity and the time to work together if we needed to. So, you know, but we found ways to work together. So, you know, some of us would need to work when we were not filming on certain scenes, and we'd need to improvise around that, or we'd need to work together on that and talk it through. And some of us would just need to, we knew each other, what we were going to do, we just got on camera and work it out that way. But we were given plenty of time to be able to do that. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to find out how each person works, because you don't, you know, as you said, you don't get the time to you don't know each other before you get there, so you need to know pretty quickly, you need to find out fairly quickly how each of you works, and you'll each work very differently. That's really important for the movie.
There was also something you told me which I found interesting, but after that you made the film, you saw car parks in a different way. You said that you thought, you know, because it makes you think again, which is not the point of making the film, by the way. But was that the same for you?
Yes. What I do see now is how much car parks are making, and you know how the people who work in car parks have to defend those prices to people who are. I seem as I pass car parks now always to see people pulling up in cars arguing with the attendants about how much it's going to cost them to get in there. Yeah,
but and even that point as well. More and more now, it's very rare that you get a car park that has somebody attending. Yeah. It's very much, you know, you get your ticket, and then at the end of it you go to your machine and you put your ticket in and it tells you owe how much, and then you pay it accordingly, you know. So even that side of it's different. But yeah, it's a little bit like when you're thinking of buying a car. You know, you don't really notice it, do you? Then you think, yeah, I'll buy that make and shape. You see loads of them on the road, then, don't you? They become more popular. But yeah, I mean, it's been a massive learning curve, and I think that's one of the beautiful things about that film, you know, because it's something that, you know, a guy who hasn't got the facilities or the finance that, say, Spielberg or anybody in that league set out to do, and you've done it. And there's not many people in this building or associated with this film festival that can lay that claim. That they've written it, produced it, directed it and made it. That's a tremendous achievement, you know. Take everything out of that, you know, that's great.
Okay, that's us having a chat, but we kind of know each other. If you've got any questions at all, just to say as well, there are, let's think, the other people involved in the film is in the Dream Girl sequence, the little girls. This girl was one of the babies, but she's grown up since. Fantastic performance done. My daughter, so she worked hard, she auditioned, but I gave her the part, you know. And Tracy there, who was our assistant camera, who there was the bit where they were singing in the car park and all those bubbles, you know, she had again had to audition blowing bubbles, but she did it really well, so thanks. So they know about the film. If you have any questions at all, then we're happy to answer. If not, then okay.
The dance sequence, do you choreograph the dancing and write the song? Because I know you've got
I'll tell you that in the audience. As far as the choreography went, again, for those of you that want to make and some of you I know will want to do this, make a low budget film, the art of that is drawing on, I mean, I make no bones about it. I mean, I kind of said to Alan and Steve, well look, I've got this, I don't have any money in Spielberg terms, of course not, but if you want to do this film, I'd love to have you in it. And with the choreography, well, let me give it to you in sequence. What happened was, and this is why it took a long time to do, because Steve and Alan may well remember, because what we'd be doing, we started shooting, as Steve says, we shot a lot of that 8 years ago. So we would shoot, and you may remember there's a part in the film where the other guy, the younger guy, kind of goes, oh, if only I was a manager of a multi-storey car park, and he drifts out. So at that point, that sequence didn't exist, and the music hadn't been recorded at all. So I would say to these guys, at this point, I have to describe it, there's a sort of dance sequence, and then we come back to it, and then we just film it. And then, I mean, just to give you the story of that, I knew a band who I really like, and again, although I like Alan and Steve as friends, I chose them because they are good actors, because just to be clear, I'd seen Steve in a lot of productions, I'd seen Alan in a lot of short movies and things, and there was a band that were really, really good in Manchester who I was kind of buddies with, and I said, can you do me a track for this film? So that sequence, for example, didn't cost me anything, because I did the lyrics, because obviously car park manager, I've got to do that because I know what I want. And one of them, they wrote the tune for it. I gave them a few pointers as to what I wanted. They wrote it, they recorded it, they gave it to me. It didn't cost me a penny. So we had it, and this is how long it takes, why it took a long time, literally like, just counting up the years. So we recorded a lot of the bits in the car park in April, September 2002. The car park manager sequence where they're all dancing around was shot in January 2005. So we turned up in January, and you know, the poor girls in those costumes were freezing. They really were freezing. But the choreography, at that time, I'm lucky to have a job here at UCLan, and I was lucky to have a job at Salford doing some work there. And there was a lady there who did choreography, and who had these, in my opinion, you know, fantastic dancers. You know, I can't do that. Not only can I not do it, I can't say to someone else, this is what I want. It would just be ludicrous, you know. So we gave them the track, and we said, look, you know, we described it. We said, this guy's having a fantasy. He's like I mean this in a sort of blue sense, but if you can imagine someone who thinks that like Robbie Williams could be a car park manager, if you know what I mean. That's kind of what's in his head. Like for him, being a car park manager is great. So that's what it would be, and we need these, we need this dancing to go around it. So they just practiced that, and literally, I trusted this, but I said, okay, we're going to be in this car park in Salford again, which we got for free. It's another story, and so on the day. What happened was, first of all, this is how it is with low budget shooting, because at the beginning of the shoot, we had Alan, we had Steve, and the guy that was the sort of slightly demented soldier, SAS, we had them, and a few sort of, not dancers, but the people that weren't in costume. So we started shooting them. Then after an hour, the lead actor had come up from London, where he was working for the BBC, because it was 3 years later. So he came up. So then that's why he's not in some of the shots. And then another hour later, these girls come in their outfits. And I just said to Alan and Steve, just think of the Temptations or that kind of stuff. So they just improvised something. And those girls had their dance, and they'd worked out that dance, because you might notice that they're all revolving around. They'd worked that out without him there. So we just put them there, and we shot 50 takes of that song. Just take after take. The number of bubbles we got through shooting that, and then stitched it together. Sorry? Yeah, they're still there, aren't they? So that's how we did it, and that's how you do a low budget film, where you just say, right, well, we'll do this in, And it really was as well. I said to them, you know, well, music's not ready yet. When's it ready? Another 6 months. Well, it's not ready, you know. One day he sent me the CDs. It's ready. Here it is. And literally again, the first time they heard that music was in that car. We just put on a ghetto blaster, played it, and then lip synced it all later. That was it.
I think one of the things that I mentioned before as well, it is about that learning process, you know, of the whole stories that are within the making of the film, you know, and hopefully, I've mentioned it to Bill before, and I hope he will do it, you know, there is a book, The Making of Car Park, and I think it'd be a brilliant book for students, you know.
The book, the working title of that book, because I think Alan's right, there is a book to be made about it, and I mean, there have been a lot of benefits from making the film in all kinds of ways, which we haven't got time to go into. But the working title of the film is How to Make a Feature Film for the Price of a second-hand car, because that's kind of how much it cost in the end. But that's the price that I paid. But the value of the film, because I'm not bigging it up, but if you actually wanted to hire Steve, you know, when Granada hires Steve, they pay a lot of money. You know, when the theatres hire Steve, because he's actually been in extras. You know, the Ricky Gervais thing, and the reason he's in extras, I don't mind me saying this, he is the top pantomime dame in the entire country. He really is. Whenever there's a thing, they reach for. Sorry?
Which episode?
It's the episode where Les Dennis is in a pantomime, and there's a pantomime dame, and that's him. And Alan's also, I don't mind me saying this, you know, if you want to hire Alan to be an MC or an actor, it'll cost you quite a few, you know, notes really. So, I'm sorry, I forgot what the hell I was talking about there.
Do you not just pay them Red Leicester and sandwiches?
Yeah, that's a big spend as well. That was a big spend. Right, sorry, I've completely forgot what the hell I was on about there. Oh no, no, that's it. I'll leave it there. I think. Anything else? Yeah.
Just going right back to the writing stage, you said you knew Alan and Steve beforehand.
Yeah.
When you were actually writing the parts, although the characters are totally different to what they are in real life,
Yeah.
how much did you visualise them playing the part as you were actually writing?
I just thought that's a really good question, and in fact it was total, because I actually had seen Steve, as I say, many times, and I knew Alan, and it was kind of a bit, you know, a private joke between Alan and I, because Alan is not that character, but it's like a massive exaggeration of Alan, as far as Alan is proactive. He's always on the go. He's one of those people, you know, he's always doing stuff, and he's very dynamic, but not in the way that character is. I mean, Alan will actually, you know, will turn his phone off and interact, whereas that guy's just, it was just. So I had them in mind as they were the first choice people. It wasn't like I went to anyone else first. They were the only people that were offered those roles. But just to explain, because it's, as I say, Frank is not Steve, and Call Me Back Keegan is not Alan. But I knew, because of the way they were, they could do stuff. Also, bizarrely, if I just explain, this is how these things work. If you want to get into this is how it happens together. With Alan, I saw Alan in a film before I ever met him, and he played this gangster, and he was really intimidating. And then he played this gangster that, excuse my language, but you know, if he was in a bad mood, would beat the shit out of people, and he did it on screen. And I had this job, and I went in a class, and Alan sat right in front of me, staring at me, and it was not a pleasant moment, you know. But fortunately, I soon found out he was only acting, and I said it was all right. In the case of Steve, the first time I met him, I didn't recognise him, because he was in a play called The Caretaker by Harold Pinter, and he played an old man so convincingly that I actually afterwards was talking to someone else I knew in the production, and said, "Well, where's that old guy?" And he said, "Well, that's him." And I went, "No, the old guy, not him." No, that is the old guy. Stephen managed to actually physically transform himself, you know, actually act like an old guy, to the point it wasn't even, it was incredible, you know. So I knew they were, because there are a lot of actors out there, not just, I mean, these are two of them, but there are a lot of really talented actors that are not famous as such, and that's, although they've both got their, you know, they've both got their equity in that sense, you know. So they were bang on. But just to explain further, the whole premise of Call Me Back Keegan was once, I'm sure it's all happened to you, I once was in a meeting, you know, quite a high-powered meeting in a TV, I was working for a media company, and this very nice person. We were having the meeting and it had been going for 5 minutes, and I'm sure this has all happened to you. And her phone went. I said, won't be a minute, and she went out of the meeting, just left, just like in the film. And I waited for a bit, and then 5 minutes later she came and said sorry, and then we continued for 5, and then the phone went again. And she left, and it was another 5, and then she came back again. And you know, we were starting to forget like what the meeting was about. You know, it lost all momentum. And I kid you not, finally, you know, we got back about the subject again. You know, oh, okay, yeah. And then the phone went again, and the point was the phone controlled her. She didn't turn it off; it just controlled her. So what happened was, which happens in the film, which inspired this moment, was she left, and she left for so long. I'm talking about half an hour. That actually. I kind of thought she'd gone, you know. I started to forget she existed. It's a bit like, you know, just when you leave your long lost lover and you just forget about him, don't you? And so I thought, well, rather than just sit here, I'll just do something. So I actually sat behind a desk in this office and got on a computer and was making some phone calls, you know. And 40 minutes later, she came in and she looked at me and there's a line in the film and she said, "This is a meeting." And she was really pissed off at me, and I said, "Well, is it?" And she went, "Yeah." I said, "Oh, okay, fair enough then," you know. And I did say it because it was real life. I like, "Well, do you want to stay for 10 minutes this time?" You know, and you know, she did. But there are people like that, so yeah.
I think just on the back of, I mean, you know, don't want to go on too long, but I think one of the things that I enjoy about the film are the little short stories within it, you know, and I think that's what I thoroughly enjoy about it. And it's like the real life stories that Bill's just explained there, those segments that he's managed to put together, and I think that's what makes it, because rather than, you know, if we're going to look at 3-act structures, or if we want to get very deep down into that, you know, with this particular film, there's so many little inroads, you know. And just going back to Steve's role, I mean, I didn't know Steve, as we said at the beginning, but he had a screaming, like absolutely hysterically, like he's just such a funny guy, and you know, but no, it was just his mannerism. And when we were going through the dry runs and the reads, you know, with the SAS man and all the rest of it, you know, it was just hilarious. It was it was a pleasure to be part of that, because everything else is going on and we're doing a read through, and you just couldn't stop laughing. It was one of those things, you know, that made the whole thing really enjoyable. And you don't realise sometimes or appreciate it that, you know, we can all be equity members, but we're not all up there in the sort of public eye, or we're famous for whatever reason, but there's so much talent there, you know, that it made me appreciate, you know, what a quality actor he is, you know.
Well, thank you.
And it comes out in that, you know, you're very strong, and it was a pleasure to work with him on that front, you know, because, you know, I've done more shorts or radio stuff as opposed to in front of the camera, you know, so we all have our strengths.
But it's all about rhythm, isn't it? And knowing you can rely on, you know, we knew we could all rely on each other, so it's all about knowing the rhythm. So you know you can do stuff because somebody else will carry it, so you know that,
yeah.
You know instinctively that somebody else, if you do something slightly different, or you want to riff on something differently, that somebody knows that's going to happen. So, you know, once you can trust everybody, then it becomes really easy.
Yeah, it was just his face and mannerisms, though, you know, that was his strength as well. Because I think you mentioned before, which was about your character, it wasn't necessarily what Bill had written that made it verbally strong. It was just his look, or just the way he stirred the tea and ate the sandwich. It's that whole concept, and you know, it takes a lot to be strong to do that, and without getting too heavy into it. But you know,
one of the most interesting things about the character,
yeah,
it's his whole life's built around it.
Yeah,
there is nothing else.
That's right.
There's nothing else.
Yeah, it was
tangible. You know?
Yeah, but it was just the sort of slow stir of the tea and the methodical way that he did it, and you know, Coogan's coming in ranting and raving, and he's still dead cool and calm, and it was just, you know, and then he's got the young mentor there who wants to be the car park manager of a multi-storey car park, and you've got the old head there, you know, because you know he looks older than he does in character, doesn't he? You know, it was just funny and a pleasure, you know. That's I mean, we never really had a chance to talk about that, have we? You know, and those are the pleasures that you get out of it. But sorry, there's a bit of self-indulgence here.
Well, we're entitled. It's
Yeah,
part of the perks. Okay. I'd just like to say as well, if you want to ask any more questions, do. But also for me, because I did write it and direct it, and having written it, you then, as a writer, have to say that's it. And now I'm the director, and I say that because when I was younger, much younger, I would say you've got to do this and you've got to do that. But I knew that Alan and Steve would bring their own thing to it, which they did. So they actually improved it massively. You know, it wasn't a question of me saying, you know, here are the notes, or I want this, or you could leave it to them. And largely, the best parts are where I didn't say anything, they just did their own thing, really. You know, which is cool. Okay, sincerely thank you for coming, because without you, it'd be very lonely. So thanks for coming along to this. And this will be eventually put on YouTube, so you can see all this again, actually, if you want. You know. Any more questions at all? Anything at all? Okay, well, thanks for coming, and see you another time sometime. Cheers.